Okay, so let us start doing the concept of supply. We have discussed not in detail in the last class supply. I have shown you the Bayer Act and I have shown you section 7 also, which deals with the scope of supply. Now let us start doing these concepts in detail. So let me share my notepad and let us start doing this supply. So section 7 of the CGST Act deals with the scope of supply. Now within this, when I say that supply, it doesn't define supply. It says supply includes. So you must know that there is no meaning of supply. It is an inclusive definition and it says some things or some activities are by default supply. So there are basically two. No, sorry, not two, three. Section 7 subsection 1 clause A, 7 subsection 1 clause B, and 7 subsection 1 clause C. So there are three different activities which are by default supply. There is no doubt about it. Under 7(1)(a), the point is something is treated as supply if following conditions are satisfied. If following conditions are satisfied, then these things are by default supply. So the point is there is a supply. In any activity or transaction, if supply of goods or services or both is happening, then it is my one condition, first condition. Second, supply can be in any, it is my second point, supply can be in any form. Like it can be sale, it can be transfer, it can be barter system of exchange, it can be normal exchange, it can be lease, etc. So it can take any form. This is my second condition. Third, it is done by a person. Of course, a person will do. Fourth, this supply is made or agreed to be made for a consideration. So consideration is must. Fifth is while performing my business, I'm doing some supply. In the course or expansion or furtherance of business. Furtherance of business. Now, for any activity under subsection 7(1)(a), if these all the 5 conditions are satisfied, it will be treated as supply. Otherwise, I cannot say that otherwise it will not be treated as supply. We have other clauses also. So just because something is not a supply under 7(1)(a), it doesn't mean it is not at all a supply. You have to read 7(1)(b) as well as 7(1)(c). And then you can ultimately decision what that activity or transaction will be. Otherwise, in 99.999999% situations, my cases of supply will be covered under 7(1)(a), 7(1)(b) or 7(1)(c) until and unless anything exceptional comes out. Now, what is 7(1)(b) if you remember? In 7(1)(b), what is the supply? When you import service, not goods, not goods. When you import services for a consideration, Whether or not business point is not necessary, whether or not in the course or furtherance of business. And if you remember 71C, what is covered in 71C? Can you tell me if you remember? Those activities which are mentioned in Schedule 1 of the Act. Schedule 1 of the CGST Act. Even if made without consideration. Now, if you remember, all these clauses are talking differently. Under clause A, consideration is also necessary as well as business is also necessary. Under clause B, consideration is necessary, but business or personal doesn't matter. Under consideration C, consideration is not necessary. Whether business is necessary or not, it is not written in the Act. Under clause A, consideration as well as business is necessary. Under clause A, consideration as well as business, both the things are necessary. Under clause B, consideration is necessary, business is not necessary. Under clause C, consideration is not necessary, whether business is necessary or not, I do not know. I hope the point is clear. This is what the Act says. I have shown you the Bare Act in the last class. I have shown you section 7. And I have also told you that in the original Act, there was 7(1)(d) also, but that was wrongly written. So that is removed now. Now what is wrong in that? I have not told you because I want you to tell me what is wrong. In case you try and do not get the answer, then only I will tell that what is the wrong thing. Otherwise, you must know that what you must analyze it yourself that yes, this was the problem in clause D. That is why it has been removed now. Anyhow, so we have clause A, clause B, and clause C now. So let me simply tell you the meaning of these examples: sale, transfer, barter, exchange, lease. I'm not telling you what is supply. Before telling supply, let us first explain the meaning of these points. So let us proceed now. Examples of some terms used in 7(1)(a). What is sale? What is sale? Mr. A supplies laptop to Mr. B. He is a dealer. It's an example of sale. That's it. That means it is a clear-cut case of sale. When Mr. A dealer in laptop, supplies laptop to Mr. B, consumer, it is a sale. What is transfer? What is transfer? Mr. A dealer transferring laptop to Mr. B and not receiving anything. In return, Mr. B is not receiving anything. In the above example, Mr. A is not receiving anything. Mr. B paid rupees 50,000 to A. But in this example, Mr. B is not giving anything to Mr. A. It is what? Transfer. I cannot call it as sale. Technically, it is a transfer that I have transferred the ownership of my laptop to Mr. B without consideration. It's transfer. I'm only explaining the meaning of transfer. I'm not using it in the context of 7(1)(a). So don't ask me the question that under 7(1)(a) there must be consideration, and since consideration is missing, it is not a supply. That is none of the business right now as far as my discussion on these words are concerned. I'm not discussing whether these are supply or not. For the time being, I simply want to tell you what is this sale transfer. It can be supply or not, it depends on other provisions. What is barter? A GST expert, or he is a chartered accountant. He gave some audit services to barber. But barber did what? Barber did facial or hair cutting of this chartered accountant. It's barter. So this professional has performed audit services for this barber. This barber has given hair cutting services and facial to this chartered accountant. It's barter. Whether this is supply or not, that is another case. I'm only explaining the meaning. Exchange. In exchange, both the things happen. Maruti announced a scheme that exchange old car. So I will give my old car plus some amount to this showroom dealer. It's the showroom of Maruti, and they will give me a new car. It is exchange. In barter, normally the cash component is missing. You perform some services or you give some goods. I in return give you some goods or will perform some services for you. But in exchange, normally some monetary figure is also involved. Last, lease. I have given my house on 20 years lease to Mr. X or Mr. Y. It's nothing but lease. It is an example of lease. So I simply wanted to discuss with you first the meaning of these. Now whether these are supply or not, that is another case. These were the meaning. Now let us discuss some examples of supply. Now I will use the word supply. Examples of supply under section 7(1)(a). First example, Mr. X, dealer. I am giving the example of laptop, a very simple example. X, or let us assume A, give laptop B. B has given 40,000. Now my question is it a supply or not? Is it a supply or not? Answer is yes. It is a supply. Yes. Under section 7(1)(a). It's a supply. Why? Because consideration is involved, business is involved. These two are main things. Consideration is involved and business is involved. So laptop is a good. Sale is happening here. B is giving 40,000, A is giving a laptop. That means it's a supply under 7(1)(a). I hope the point is clear. Next example, Mr. A, dealer in laptop. Laptop to B, free of cost, no consideration, neither cash nor non-cash, free of cost. Or I can say no consideration is received. I can say no consideration is received by A. Can you tell me whether it is a supply under section 7(1)(a) or not? Can you tell me whether it is a supply under 7(1)(a) or not?
No, sir.
No. Why? Because for 7(1)(a), both the things are necessary. So it is not a supply under 7(1)(a). Why? Because consideration is missing. But it does not mean that it is not at all a supply. It can be a supply under 7(1)(b) or 7(1)(c), which I have not yet read. It is not a supply under 7(1)(a), but I cannot take the final decision just by having a look at 7(1)(a). We have two more clauses. It is like a residential status of the topic Income Tax Act. If you remember residential status, who are resident individuals? There are two basic conditions to determine residential status. Either I must be present in India for 182 days or more, or I must be present in India for 60 days or more, plus 365 days or more during 4 years. So just because someone is not present for 182 or more, I cannot say that the person is non-resident. I check another condition also. Same is the case here. If something is not at all supply under 7(1)(a), I cannot say that it is not at all a supply. Government says no issue, wait. You have 7(1)(b) as well as 7(1)(c) also. Only then you take a decision. Similarly, next. Dealer. Laptop. Or not a dealer. Now, this person is not a dealer. This person is a teacher. This person is a teacher. Supplied laptop to his friend B. And B has given some consideration, for example, only 5,000. Now, is it a supply or not? Can you tell me, is it a supply or not? Is it a supply or not under 7(1)(a)? Anyone who can try to tell, is it a supply or not under 7(1)(a)? This is my question. Is it a supply under 7(1)(a) or not?
Yes, sir.
Why?
Because there is a consideration, even though not adequate, but consideration is there.
No. How can you say that it is not adequate? हो सकता है वो लैपटॉप हो ही 2,000 रुपए का. हर लैपटॉप 50,000 का थोड़ी ना हो सकता है. हो सकता है बिल्कुल कूड़ा है, उस लैपटॉप में कुछ है ही नहीं, हार्ड डिस्क पुरानी हो चुकी है, कोर टू डीओ प्रोसेसर है. सो यू शुड नॉट यूज दिस थिंग दैट इज inadequate. How do you know it is inadequate? Have you seen the laptop? Is the point clear?
Yes, sir.
So you cannot say it is inadequate. Now, but why it is a supply? Still the answer is not clear. Why it is a supply? Is it for my business? I'm not a businessman, I'm a teacher. I'm not a dealer in laptops, so I'm not supplying it in the course of business. So it is not a supply under 7(1)(a). Because for 7(1)(a), you need to have all the 5 conditions. There is a supply of goods. It is a sale. It is made by a person. It is for a consideration, but it is not in the course or furtherance of business. Had I been a dealer, I could have said that it's a supply. But for me, if I'm not into the profession of a laptop selling and purchase, so it's not a business for me. So it's not a supply. Under 7(1)(a). Point clear or not? Point clear or not?
Yes, sir.
Now, for simplicity, I am saying to you that it is not a business, but in reality, it is not the situation. You must remember the definition of business, which I am not discussing for the time being with you. It can be a supply. It can be a supply. So what you have said, it can be a supply provided it is a business. It is not a business till we discuss the definition of business. Till you know what is included in business, you can say that it is not a supply. But if you know the definition of business, then the answer might change. I'm not saying that answer will change, answer might change. So I'm skipping for the time being, because for the time being, I wanted to show you only some brief discussion. I wanted to have a brief discussion. So till we discuss the definition of business as defined in section 2, till I discuss that definition, start assuming that it is not a business, that's it. So in this, my assumption is it's not a business. This is my assumption. My assumption is this transferring laptop is not a business of this teacher, because business does not mean that I have to open a shop. Without opening the shop also, my activity can be treated as business activity. But that I will discuss later on. For the time being, I simply wanted to show you that if something is not at all a supply under 7(1)(a), don't assume that it is altogether not a supply. Still, we have other two clauses also. Next point. For 7(1)(a), both the things are necessary. It should be for the business and it is for a consideration. Now, next point. Now, let me discuss with you 7(1)(b). Now, what is 7(1)(b)? If you remember, it was having import only services, not goods. It was asking you that if you are importing services, not goods, consideration is must. Consideration is must. Whether or not for business, not must. Business or not compulsory. Now, if I assume an example, Mr. X, a doctor, wants to have some interior decoration in his home. So he has availed from Mr. John of Canada. John is in Canada and he is an expert in interior decoration. Okay, so he has availed the services of John for his home, for his house, and payment $3 lakh. My point is it a supply or not? Can you tell me, is it a supply or not? As a doctor, Mr. X, I have availed some interior designing services from a person who is in Canada. Not for my business, not for my hospital, not for my clinic, but for my home. Is it a supply? Is this activity be treated as supply under GST laws? Any answer? Is it a supply? Can anyone tell me, is it a supply or not?
Yes, sir.
Yes, it is a supply. Why? Yes, it is a supply, but why?
So it is a service and it is given for a consideration.
Yes, so even if it is personal, doesn't matter. This personal has no effect because Act says that whether it is business or not, it's none of the consideration. This consideration is necessary where $3 lakh is being paid. It's a supply. In the same example, if Mr. X, a doctor, avails designing services for his clinic, right, for business, from his brother Mr. Y, who is also in Canada. He is also an expert in interior designing. Or let us not assume Mr. Y is the brother, Mr. Y is another person. But now he has supplied, maybe because of some personal relation, Mr. Y has supplied free of cost this service. Is it a supply or not? Think carefully, is it a supply or not under 7(1)(b)? This was supply, but is it a supply or not? Mr. X, a doctor, for his clinic has obtained some interior designing services from Mr. Y of Canada. It's an import of services, but will it be supply? Will it be treated as a supply or not? Any answer?
No, sir.
No, because the reason is it is without any consideration. This is the only reason. It is not a supply
Excuse me, sir.
because consideration is missing. It is not a supply because consideration is missing. Now, whether for his clinic or brick home, that is of no use. It does not matter. Act says it does not matter whether you are importing these services for your personal purpose or for business. That is none of the concern. Consideration must be there. Any doubt? These are the examples of 7.1b. Any doubt? Please ask me. Otherwise, I will proceed to the next point.
Sir, am I audible, sir?
Yeah.
Sir, can you explain it once again? It is understood.
Which point? Next example or previous example?
The previous example.
Previous means what? Example A or example B if the screen is
Yes,
visible to you?
yes, sir. Yes.
A. Example A. Mr. X was a
Yes, sir.
doctor. Mr. X was a doctor and he has imported the services of interior decorator for his home and he paid $3 lakh to Mr. John. This is a supply under section 7 subsection 1 clause B because every import whether for your business purposes or personal purposes doesn't matter if you are making some payment on that import of services it is treated as supply and you have to pay GST. That's it.
Okay.
Okay, now I hope 7.1b is clear to everyone and let me proceed now to 7.1c. Now it says that all activities which are written in Schedule 1 of the CGST Act even if made without consideration, that consideration is not necessary. Even if made without consideration, further whether business is required or not, that act doesn't tell me whether business is required or not required. It is also not mentioned in the act. Then these things are also treated as supply. Now for this you need to know what is this Schedule 1. So let me show you the bare act and let us see what is mentioned in Schedule 1 of the CGST. Schedules are always mentioned in the last. So these are the last pages of the act. So this is my Schedule 1. See section number 7. So reference of this is also given that Schedule 1 is required in section 7 and what is the heading you can see. Activities to be treated as supply even if made without consideration. So even if no amount is involved or no in-kind amount is involved, still you have to treat it as supply even if without consideration. Now it covers 4 paragraphs. This is paragraph 1, paragraph 2, For simplicity, you can use the word point also, but it is paragraph 1, paragraph 2, para 3, para 4. There are only 4 such activities, that's it. So you have to learn these 4. And let me discuss with you first point, what it says. That it is a supply, permanent transfer or disposal of business assets. Permanent transfer or disposal of business assets where input tax credit has been availed on such assets, it's supply. So when you permanently sell your business asset on which you have taken ITC, then it is treated as supply always. Second point or second paragraph. Supply of goods or services or both between related persons. So now it's a new word, related persons. Supply of goods or services or both between related persons or between distinct persons as specified in section 25. Now I hope you remember this word, distinct persons. When I was discussing with you section 25, which talks about procedure of registration, section 25 which talks about procedure of registration, in that section 25 there was section 25 subsection 4 and subsection 5. I discussed those subsections in section 25 and I asked you at that time that these will be used in the topic of supply or maybe at some other places also. So when this supply happens either between related persons or between distinct persons, what do I mean by distinct? Which is written in section 25. When made in the course or furtherance of business, it is also supply. Now if you remember this heading of schedule 1, it says it can be even without consideration. If consideration is involved, we have no issue. Even if no consideration, we have no issue. It has to be treated as supply. Whether business involvement is there or not, it is not written in the heading of schedule 1. So it depends upon each and every point. Like in second point, they say it should be for the business. In second point, they are saying that it should be for the business. In first point, they are not saying that it should be for the business. In first point, they are not using this sentence when made in the course or furtherance of business. But in second paragraph, they are using the sentence made in the course or furtherance of business. So that also you need to see. If you remember section 7, subsection 1, clause A, business as well as consideration both are necessary. In 7.1b, consideration is necessary, business or not, doesn't matter. In 7.1c, consideration is not necessary, business or not, again it depends. So when you say in 7.1c whether business is required or not, Act says I do not know, check those respective 4 different activities. Like in activity 1 of schedule 1, whether or not for the business, doesn't matter. But in activity 2, business involvement is must. So this is how you should read the provisions and analyze those. But within second activity, when supply is happening between related persons or distinct persons, when made in the course of business, it is to be treated as supply, but there is an exception to this point. Exception, what is that exception? Provided that gifts not exceeding rupees 50,000, provided that gifts not exceeding 50,000 rupees in value in a financial year by an employer to an employee shall not be treated as supply of goods or services or both. Now, like if my institution SRCC gives me a wristwatch, I am the employee of this college. If this college gives me a wristwatch of 40,000 rupees, it's not a supply. The college is not supposed to pay any GST on this 40,000. But if this college gives me a wristwatch of 60,000 rupees, 60,000 rupees, it will be treated as supply and college has to pay GST on this 60,000 rupees. So that is why exception has been given that till 50,000 rupees gift by the employer to the employee per year are indirect taxes free, are free from GST, that's it. Now we have third and fourth paragraph also that I will discuss later on. Let us first discuss in detail paragraph 1 and 2. So I hope you remember that first point is what? Permanent transfer or disposal of business assets where ITC has been availed on such asset. Again, let me share with you the notepad and let me assume these examples of this activity 1. So now I remember that in this there are 4 activities which are mentioned. I hope you have seen now this schedule and there are 4 activities. So let me discuss my first activity. See, it's not easy to treat something as not a supply. Government has made sure that every activity is supply. Just like government has made sure that everything which you earn is an income under income tax act, government has made sure that normally everything will be supply except in highly exceptional circumstances. Otherwise, it's not easy to say that it is not a supply. So let me discuss with you activity 1. What act says? Permanent transfer. Permanent transfer oblique disposal of business assets. Even without consideration is by default. Okay, this point you should note that even without consideration is by default because that is written in the heading. Okay, this heading. Even without consideration is by default. For all the activities, even without consideration is by default. This point is by default. Permanent transfer or disposal of business assets even without consideration. Now, consideration can be there, but if it is without consideration, still it does not matter. Where ITC, input tax credit, has been availed. On such business assets. Now let me assume an example and I will ask this question from you. Mr. X, a dealer, supplied a laptop to Mr. Y, one laptop to Mr. Y. He has given rupees 80,000. My question is, so my question, is it a supply? Is it a supply under section 7(1)(c)? This is my question. Is it a supply under 7(1)(c)? Kindly answer. Is it a supply under 7(1)(c)? Any answer, yes or no? Is it a supply under 7(1)(c)? Anyone who can tell me the answer? Can you treat it as a supply under 7(1)(c)? Any comment which you want to make? Any viewpoint which you want to share on this point? Anything which you want to explain?
Yes, sir.
Why?
So because even without consideration, so it is with consideration, so that would also be included.
No, answer is no. It is not a supply. Because why will I check section 7(1)(c)? It is a supply under 7(1)(a). Yes or no? Why will I check 7(1)(c)? It is a supply under 71A. Why will I check 71C? It is a supply under section 71A. If you remember 71A, what are the conditions? There must be consideration, which is there. There must be a supply of goods, which is there. It is for the business because I am a dealer. It is a sale, yes. It is by a person, yes. So it's also already a supply under 71A. Why will I search and ask for 71C? Point clear or not? Any doubt?
No, sir.
No means what? Any doubt? There is no doubt?
Yes, sir, no doubt.
Okay. So I'm not saying it is not a supply, but why will I check 71C? No need to check, no need to verify, or no need to check 71C because already it is a supply under 71A. I hope the point is clear. So that is why you must remember that if already I have easy sections available 71A or 71B, why will I check 71C? So let me go to the next example. Example 2. Let me go to the next example. He is a dealer in laptop, Mr. B. Now he is a purchaser also. Everyone who is a dealer is a purchaser also. Mr. K is the wholesaler, another wholesaler. So B purchases some laptops from K and B pays some amount also. For example, B has purchased 200 laptops from K and paid 2 lakh rupees. 2 lakh rupees, not 2 lakh, 200 laptop into 10,000 and paid 20 lakh rupees, for example. For example, GST is 28%. 5 lakh 60. Okay, so this is what the point is. Now, when he has supplied the laptops, maybe 180 laptops he has supplied at 12,000 rupees. Maybe I have supplied 180 laptops at rupees 12,000. So total value becomes 21 lakh 60. And here also, for example, GST is 28%. So it becomes how much? 6 lakh 4,800. Now this is the value. Okay. Now technically, in all these, yes. But how will I pay GST? So calculation of tax is how much? Or how much is the amount of GST which I need to pay? My output tax is how much? 604,800. But I will say to the government that I have ITC also, 5 lakh 60. So how much I will pay to you? This is what B is saying to the government of India, 604,800 minus 560. B is saying that I will pay you 14,4,800. Government says no problem because government is not losing the revenue. What government actually needs 604,800 because it is the final supply. Who has to bear the burden? Final consumer. Businessman is not supposed to bear any burden because my job is to simply supply the goods. I am a part of value chain, supply chain, that's it. Who consumes has to pay final, that's it. This is what the purpose of indirect tax. So ultimately, final consumer who has purchased 180 laptops for personal use or no, or for whatever, doesn't matter, 604,800 that final consumer will pay, and that person has paid to B 608,4,800. Final consumer has paid to B, but B will not pay 604,800 to the government because B has already paid something to Mr. K and K has already deposited it. Out of 604,800, if you understand, 560 is paid to the government by Mr. K and this remaining balance 44,800 will be paid to the government by Mr. B. So technically government is not losing anything. Government wanted to collect 604,800, they collected through two different people. That is the only point. Now is it clear? Kindly unmute and reply. Have you understood this structure? That final collection from to the government should be 604,800. 5,60,000 already which B has given to K. K will deposit it with the government 560. Remaining which final consumer has given to B, balance B will deposit to the government. So ultimately government will get 604,800. Please raise your hand if the concept is clear. Hurry up, please raise your hand if the concept is clear. Sorry, not raise your hand because when this notepad is on, I cannot see whether you have raised your hands or not. Kindly unmute and reply if you have understood this structure. I will make some change now.
Yes.
Have you understood? Everyone? Have you all understood? अरे बोलो भाई, बोलने में दिक्कत है क्या? Have you all
Yes.
understood or not? अब मैं आपकी शक्ल तो देख
Yes,
नहीं
sir.
सकता, तो कम से कम बोल ही दो. Because when we are in virtual mode, how will I know whether I should proceed or not? So why don't you speak? So let us make one change. Now what is that change? Now on an average, now for example, out of 200 laptops, B has sold 180 laptops and taken entire ITC, and there is no problem. Because you cannot say that always electronic credit ledger is open. When for any registered person, always this account will be available. Electronic credit ledger, always it is available. And this ITC is 560 is available. Mr. B. So this is the electronic credit ledger of Mr. B. Always it is available. It is not the logic that these 200 laptops, this ITC will be allowed to Mr. B only when the same laptops are sold. Answer is no. It's not necessary that the same laptops are sold. There may be some laptops which are purchased some days before, etc. etc. So ITC is not given only on good related. That when you sell the same laptop only then ITC is allowed. No, answer is no. If ITC is allowed, then it is allowed even for other supply of goods also. Now what I am doing now, out of 200, I have sold 180 here. But still I have taken entire ITC. As you can see, I have taken entire ITC. So there should not be any question in your mind that 560 is the tax paid when I purchased 200 laptops. So this should not come in your mind. That rupees 2,800 is per laptop ITC. So when I sell 180 laptops, only this much ITC should have been allowed. This problem should not come in your mind. Okay, you should not say that. You should not ask me the question that why 5,04,000 was not allowed to me as ITC, because I have cleared this point that ITC does not depend only on the number of goods. If 5,60,000 is allowed to you as ITC, this is the tax paid by you. You can claim it entirely. It does not matter how many laptops you sold. I hope this point is clear. Now I am making one change. Out of 200 laptops, I am selling 180, and I have donated one laptop. So now what I am doing, out of 200 laptops, now I have donated, not sold. One laptop is donated by me. I donated one laptop. So that means if I donated one laptop, what is my consideration? Zero. What is my consideration? Zero, because I donated. Now the question arises, is this donation supply or not? Should I pay GST? Now this is the question. Is it a supply? under section 7(1)(c)? Is it a supply? Now, one thing is sure that it is not a supply under 7(1)(a) because in 7(1)(a) consideration is must, and I have donated it. So technically, you will not receive any consideration. So it cannot be a supply under 7(1)(a). Can it be a supply under 7(1)(b)? Answer is no, because this is not import of service. Can it be a supply under 7(1)(c)? That you have to tell me. Will it be treated as supply under 7(1)(c)? Can anyone tell me? As far as my first activity is concerned, permanent disposal of business assets. Permanent disposal of business assets. Yeah, I am permanently disposing. I am permanently transferring this laptop. When I have given something as donation, that means it is permanently transferring. Even without consideration, yes, because it is donated. But the point is where ITC has been availed. Can anyone throw some light whether it is a supply or not? Can you think in this direction whether it is a supply or not? Can you throw some light whether it is a supply or not? Can anyone tell me, is it a supply or not?
Yes, sir, it's a supply.
Why? Why?
Because ITC is availed and even when consideration is not charged.
Okay, any other answer? Is it a supply or not? Any other answer? Is it a supply or not under 7(1)(c)? Answer is yes, it is a supply because you have availed ITC. Because on one laptop, on an average, 2800 was the input tax credit, which you have taken back from the government of India, which you have indirectly taken back from the government of India because you have used entire 5,60,000. Okay, this is what the chain is. You have used entire 560. So technically, you have taken back this amount from the government of India. The amount which was deposited, 560, was technically deposited by Mr. K already. So when you have taken ITC, that means indirectly you have availed this. Indirectly, you are taking back this. Point clear or not? Indirectly, you are taking back the amount. So government says what? Being in democratic setup, if you are donating laptop, it is your choice. Why? Government says why we should donate 2,500, 2,800. Why we should donate rupees 2,800? Because it is the government's amount, tax amount. When you donate laptop, you are not only giving your money in that donation, you are giving government's tax revenue also. And government being a secular nation, as per the Indian constitution, they will decide themselves, the government will decide themselves whether the donation is to be given for the common purpose or for the purpose of one particular religion or one particular caste or one particular person's satisfaction. That is why when you donated laptop, you basically gave the share of two people, your own share as well as government's tax share. Had you not taken IC, government would not have objected to your donation. Had you not taken ITC, but when you have availed ITC, then even if you are giving something without consideration, government says we will treat this as supply, because if we will not treat this as supply, technically we will lose our tax revenue. Point clear or not? So technically government is losing 2,800 if it is not treated as supply. That is why it has to be treated as supply, because when you will treat it as supply, you will pay GST. Now that is another question, that what value should be taken, because technically I am not selling, I am only donating. So technically I will say that the value of supply is zero because I have donated. Government says you wait, we have some rules with us. We will tell you that in this donation how much supply you have to take. So it's a supply. So technically what is this point? The point is when you are permanently disposing, when you are permanently transferring, Your business assets. Laptop was my business asset in my example. It was my business asset because I was a dealer. And on this laptop, another condition is I have availed ITC. I have availed ITC. That even if I supply this laptop free, even if I supply this laptop free of cost, I have to treat it as supply. It has to be treated as supply under section 7(1)(a). I have given you the reason also, because if you don't treat it as supply, then technically whatever ITC you have availed, government will lose that permanently in this donation. And being a secular country, government will say that we will decide ourselves where our tax amount should go. It will go for some common cause and not to that organization which as a businessman you think or you are in love with. Government will decide itself where they want to give their tax share. So how will they take back the ITC? Because ITC has already been availed. So how will they take back the ITC from this businessman? They say that you have to treat this supply, even if donated as supply. The moment you treat it as supply, by default ITC will be taken back indirectly, because when you treat it as supply, you will compute some value as per some rules which I will tell you later on, and on this you will charge GST at the rate of, for example 28%. So technically when you pay this tax indirectly, this will cover your ITC amount, this will cover government's ITC amount also. So when you donate something as a businessman, do not forget that you are not only donating your laptop, you have to donate tax also indirectly to the government of India. So government says if you donate something, then don't donate only to that organization. We also need donation in the form of tax. You have to treat it as supply. Please raise your hand if the concept is clear. In case not, ask me the doubt. Otherwise, now please raise your hand. It was not technical, it was interesting. You must understand that what is going on behind any provision. You are not supposed to learn just line by line. You have to think, give some positive stress on your mind, and analyze what is working behind that one line. That what was the intention of the government? That government doesn't want to lose the tax revenue just because of your donation. Please raise your hand if the point is clear. Hurry up. So we have covered our 7(1)(c), my first activity. Even if free, still you have to treat it as supply. So that's sufficient for now. And let me note down your roll numbers. Goodbye for now.